But it is something that grinds my gears to absolutely no end when pacers start saying, we did it, we accomplished this. I think if the runner says it, like, okay, I don't agree, but fine and fair. If your pacer starts saying it, I get pretty booty tickled about it, because you ran at most probably half as far, and that one gets me. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Running Rants with Helen. As always, I'm Helen, and this is where I rant and talk about whatever I want. And before we get into the topic for today, you might notice that this looks a little different, and that's because, to sum it all up, I'm a bit of a princess and kind of a diva when it comes to running on dirt. And when I started this channel, it was October. And that means that it was pretty much almost winter where I live. And that means I couldn't run on a lot of trails. And I felt okay running on pavement because it was my only choice. And now it's not my only choice. And so I said, Jacob, I won't run on a path. And he said, well, I can't really one wheel on single track while holding a 20-pound gimbal and try to track you, which is very fair. So this is our solution for the time being, because otherwise I literally will not make YouTube videos. So yes, that is an update. We'll see how it looks. We'll see how it goes. And so today I wanted to talk about pacing and crewing ultras, and like what I think makes a good pacer and generally a good crew. I wouldn't say I have the most experience, but I did pace and crew my good friend Tommy Sullivan. It was almost 3 weeks ago. And then this past weekend, I crewed and paced my friend Gina at Me Walk 100K. And they were two very, very different experiences. And I guess just to give some more context on what my credibility is, let's see, I paced and crewed Esther Chilog at States the last 2 years. She got third both times. I ran the last 22 miles with her. And then I crewed and maybe was supposed to pace MK Sullivan at Black Canyon last year, but I think she dropped out at like mile 20. And then the other time was I started pacing and I crewed my friend Tara Fraga at Kodiak, but she also dropped out. So maybe my track record up until now wasn't that great, but I feel like I've learned a lot. And I feel like the number one thing that I've learned is that it really doesn't matter if your crew knows anything about running, in my experience. They just have to be willing to listen to directions and really, really love you. And mostly the really, really love you. Because I guess like the other thing that made me realize that was my experience at CCC the first time I ran it. My grandparents came with me and I was going to have them crew me, but then I found out that you only get one person, and with my grandparents, I guess like I can't choose one, because I feel like they kind of need each other to make it to places effectively. And I don't like, I feel like my grandpa, because they've crewed me at like my first 100K, and I feel like they have the right energy like my grandpa does, but I don't know that he would make it to the correct place at the correct time. And I was a little worried. And so at that point I was sponsored by North Face, and they asked like if I needed anything. I said, oh, like actually, if you guys have someone who could just meet me at Champay-Lac, which is 50k in, and the other points don't matter, I'll just get all my stuff there. And I told them my time range of when I would be there, and I was actually on the slow side, and I got to Champay-Lac and no one was there. And I called them and I said, where are you? And they said, well, the little tracker said you wouldn't be there. And I said, but I am here. So that was very stressful because they had literally all of my nutrition for the next half of my race. And I had to stand there and just wait as the race ran away from me. I think I stood there for about 7 minutes before they showed up. And that's like the UTMB tracker. I think it takes like your average pace from the last 2 checkpoints and like extrapolates it, but that whole last part was downhill and the whole first part was uphill. So I made it there like a lot faster than was expected based off the tracker, not based off of my time. And it's no fault of that guy. I think he just didn't love me, which is fair. He didn't know me. So I think that's the biggest thing. Although I did hear a story when I said that to some people this past weekend where someone's mom is their first time crewing and they thought that their child, the runner, looked bad. So then they just put a bunch of extra electrolytes in their bottles without telling them. And then they proceeded to throw up for a few hours. So that's a situation where you have to be good at listening to directions. Pacing Tommy was such a different experience from pacing my friend Gina, but I also think like their goals were a little different, and the races were just different. But yeah, Tommy and I have the same coach, Rick, because Tommy is MK's husband, and I've known MK forever. But we joke that like if you drop your pacer then you don't need them. And I was running the last 25-26 miles with Tommy, and he like had very like set goals and like wanted to win, and I feel like I totally get that vibe. Also, I started running at 11:45 p.m. and I was done running at like 4:30 a.m. and honestly it was really good practice for me because I don't normally run in the middle of the night, and I don't know, I think it went well. Like Tommy, honestly, it seemed like he had no problems other than you just run 100 miles. There were so many newts though, and it was in the dark and they were all over the trail, and you try so hard to not step on them, but like it was for sure a newt massacre. And yeah, that's unfortunate, and I'll probably remember it forever. But yeah, like with Tommy, I pretty much just ran ahead of him so he could follow, and then every time he started getting too close, I just run a little faster, which is probably pretty frustrating, but I think it makes you run faster. And then he was drinking a bottle like every 30 minutes, so I would give him little warnings of, you have 22 minutes left to finish that. But then sometimes I'd forget, so then it was like, now you have 3 minutes, get to it. But like we were not chatting. It was like, good job, you have to run faster and keep drinking. But it was great. Tommy got second in his first 100 miler and ran like 16:24, which to me feels very fast. And I had a good time. I also had a hard time, honestly. Not as hard as him, obviously, but I feel like you kind of forget because like what you're doing compared to them feels really small because it's only like a part. But then it's also like, yeah, I just ran a marathon in the middle of the night and got like 2 hours of sleep. So, and I don't know, I think generally crewing stresses me out more than running because I always get nervous that I'm gonna miss them even if I'm there like an hour and a half early, because what if they're running that fast? So you know, the good old game of hurry up and wait. And then this last weekend, I crewed and paced Gina, who I know from home. Her and her husband moved, but then they'll be moving back. And I love Gina. She's probably the nicest girl to ever exist. And I was very happy when she asked if I wanted to come hang out, because I hadn't seen her since like October. And so I got to crew all day with her husband Vince, who is also very nice. And yeah, like I said, different experience. So for me, it was the last 13 miles. So I started at mile 49, and Gina just wanted someone to like chat with, to like, I guess, take her mind off of how hard it was. But I feel like that's pretty much what I do here, is I just don't stop talking about whatever. So I feel like it kind of worked out. But it's also funny because I don't know, I think Gina is like one of the least competitive people I have ever met, and I love that for her. And sometimes I wish I was a little bit more that way, but like the last time we had seen her was mile 30. I think third place was like right ahead of her, and the instant I saw her and told her that, she literally looked at us so confused. She's like, why would I care? And it's like, oh yeah, good point. That is not how you are motivated, which is totally fine. And then, yeah, I got to see her at mile 49, and I pretty much just talked to her for 2 hours and 45 minutes or whatever it took. And like, even going down the last downhill, there was a girl right behind her, and Gina just like kind of slows down, and she goes, oh, do you want to pass me? And the girl was like, yeah. She's like, okay, cool, bye. And I just, yeah, I love that about her. And so I guess like when it comes to crewing and pacing, I think the biggest thing is your crew should have good vibes. They don't have to know each other, but like, I feel like easygoing, chill people, but with one person in charge who keeps everything in order is the best dynamic. Pacing, I feel like it depends on what you want. Like, I feel like Tommy wanted like serious, this is business, and Gina wanted to have a fun time hanging out. And so I think it just depends on like who that person is, and I think it helps, like, obviously if you know them, but also like the first time I paced Esther, I think we would run together once for like maybe an hour, and I feel like you just kind of also can pick up throughout the day, because I was crewing her too, like the vibe. But I think another important thing is, which I heard a lot about this weekend from other people, and they're like crew horror stories, I guess, is you can't have two people who want to be in charge, because then they start like fighting for the power and undermining each other. And to me, that sounds absolutely insane. And yeah, I think if you have one person like that, good, because someone has to keep the schedule and the bottles. You can't have two people like that, because then it's just bad vibes, it seems like. Kevin Russ also asked if, oh, I almost died. Kevin Russ, who's running Cocodona, also asked me if I would pace him at Cocodona, but I have middle school track, and also Cocodona is like a week-long commitment, and it's raining, and I hate the rain. Maybe it's not just if they love you, because Jacob loves me, and I love Jacob, but I think him pacing me would actually probably be bad. And like Gina and Vince decided they can't pace each other, and I think the reason for that for me is like I think I get a little bit more complainy around Jacob, for better or for worse, probably for worse, but I feel like I'd be like, oh my gosh, my toe hurts, I can't keep running, and then he would say, you have to keep running, and then I'd probably say, why are you being mean to me? And so that's not a good dynamic for pacing. But I think I'm gonna have my dad pace me at Leadville, and I think that'll be good because I will not complain around him. So maybe I'll just zip it and run harder. I don't know, we'll see.
Okay, so you talked about how different people want different things from a pacer. Tommy wanted to have a really competitive, hard time. Gina, although she's also very fast,
so fast,
just wanted to like have a friend out there to enjoy it with. But if you're lined up to pace someone, like what are good questions you could ask them ahead of the race to understand what you can bring to the table as crew and pacer?
Yeah, so I think part of it is honestly how long the race is, because quite honestly I don't really understand having pacers in 100Ks unless you're running through the dark, which no one was, because cutoffs are before sunset at that race, and so I feel like you just usually go to a darker place in 100 milers, and so like with Gina's race I feel like she had that energy to like have a conversation even if I was talking more, whereas sometimes I think in the longer stuff, like you honestly don't want to use energy like chit-chatting, which I totally get. So I think questions are, well, that's not a question, but just like knowing how long the race is, knowing that person's goals. So like maybe they have a time goal, maybe they have like a place goal, which that one's kind of tricky because that depends on other people. And then I think asking them like what motivates them, like do they want to finish a race like feeling good and like they did it and not completely wrecked, or like is it someone who wants to like run absolutely as fast as they can no matter what? And yeah, Gina is so fast. Like I think she still got like 5th or 6th place and like trains a lot, but also like she's not doing this professionally, it is her hobby. And so I feel like sometimes that can even change the dynamic a little bit. But yeah, I think it's also knowing your runner, because Esther, like I cannot imagine English not being my first language and then trying to like fully conversate with someone at like mile 90 of a race. Like to me that sounds impossible. I think I'd have a hard enough time, and English is my first language. I think it takes too much brain. So yeah, I think it's just like kind of comes down to knowing your runner, knowing their goals, and you can also just straight up ask them.
Running ahead versus running behind, is that a conversation to have?
Yeah, and I feel like that's completely up to them. Like originally Tommy thought he wanted me to run behind, but then he was running too slow, and so then we switched it in front. And I think sometimes when you're tired too, it's just like one less thing to think about if you have someone ahead of you, and then they're also like determining the turns, especially if it's dark. Like, I think it's just easier to trust that your pacer knows where they're going. With Esther, I feel like it kind of changed. Sometimes it was ahead, sometimes it was behind, but she would just tell me if she wanted to switch.
Are there things as a pacer or crew you should come kind of preloaded with, as far as like if they have a favorite song or jokes, or like is that a good idea to have things ready to go, or just kind of feel out the situation?
I don't normally have anything. I usually feel out the situation. I kind of was giving Tommy shit just because he said that his only goal was to drop his pacers. And so we got to Roby Point and he asked how much longer. I said, oh, yeah, about a mile. I was like, you know what that means? He's like, what? And I was like, you're really running out of time to drop me. So, I don't know. I feel like it also kind of depends on your relationship. Like, I have only run one race where I've ever had a pacer, and it was 2021. I ran Castle Peak, and actually Tommy paced me. Very honestly, I wanted MK to pace me, but she was busy because she was coaching at UNR, and she was like, she offered up Tommy, and I was like, yeah, okay, great. But I didn't really know him that well at that point, and I remember just like wanting to lay down and cry on the trail, and I was like, I can't. I don't even know him that well. Tommy's never seen me cry, so I feel like I kind of held it together better than I would have like someone that I'm super good friends with. Yeah, and then my grandparents, they crewed me at that race.
Just talk a little bit about like preparedness as a crew and pace member, like so you don't become a liability and you don't become a thing that your runner has to worry about.
Yeah, your runner should never have to worry about you. And so I feel like just always making sure you have enough like fuel and water for your own running, that you have snacks if you're crewing all day, that you brought enough, so you brought enough like food and snacks for the whole time you're gonna be out there. Because like I said, if they drop you, they don't need you, but you also have to like, you have a responsibility, and like that person trusted you to like be able to be there for them, and so I feel like you should. One thing though is I never ever think that like someone had, and people might feel differently about this, but I don't think a runner has the race that they did because of their pacers. I think it comes from them, and they probably could have done it either way, even if they don't think so, but it is something that grinds my gears to absolutely no end when pacers start saying, we did it, we accomplished this. I think if the runner says it, like, okay, I don't agree, but fine and fair. If your pacer starts saying it, I get pretty booty tickled about it, because you ran at most probably half as far, and that one gets me. The other one that gets me, and I don't know if this is just like common courtesy, etiquette, I personally don't think that your pacer should cross the finish line. Step outside of the finish chute. It's not your moment, it's not your time. It is about the person who ran the race. I think sometimes there can be like exceptions to that. Like if the runner really, really wants their pacer to cross the finish line with them, but yeah, I don't know, I've seen it like at States in Black Canyon when it feels like pacers and crew start to make it more about them, and I hate it. If that's your only way to stay relevant, yikes. The last thing is, I really enjoy crewing and pacing, because sometimes then you get like a front seat to how other people problem solve and how they race. And sometimes I feel like you can learn really important things that maybe you wouldn't learn unless you were in that position. So I love it for that. And I don't know, I just think it's really fun. So I guess if you like pacing and crewing, let me know in the comments. Maybe don't let me know if you liked this video version better. I do think that the trail is more exciting. Yeah, this has been another episode of Running Rants with Helen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Sure.